I join my colleague, Senator Kirk, today in paying tribute to our fallen colleague and friend, Senator Charles Percy, who died on Saturday. He served Illinois and our nation for 18 years here in the United States Senate. Although he ran against the two men who were my greatest political inspirations, Senator Paul Douglas and Senator Paul Simon, I always regarded Senator Percy as a friend and as an honest, honorable representative of our state of Illinois. It's a little-known fact about Chuck Percy that he was nearsighted in one eye and farsighted in the other. That unusual vision was a good metaphor for his politics as well. He described himself as fervently moderate, a progressive Republican. He said he was, quote, a conservative on money issues, but a liberal on people issues, end of quote. He used the word liberal in the days when you could get away with it. Charles Harding Percy was born in 1919 in Pensacola, Florida. His family moved to Chicago Rogers Park neighborhood when he was a baby. His father worked as a bank clerk. His mother taught violin for 25 cents a lesson. The bank at which his father worked failed in the Depression, and the Percy family was forced into bankruptcy and on to relief. Chuck Percy got his first job at the age of 5 selling magazines to help his family along. He sold his mother's homemade cookies door to door, rose at 3:30 in the morning to deliver newspapers, and parked cars and worked as a janitor, all while he was in high school. He worked his way through the University of Chicago on a half-tuition scholarship, and along the way had an economics professor, Dr. Paul Douglas. In 1936, while Chuck Percy was still in college, his Sunday school teacher encouraged him to enter a training program at the man's company. The company was Bell & Howell, a very small manufacturer at the time of home movie cameras near Skokie, Illinois. After graduating from the University of Illinois with a degree in economics, Chuck Percy went to work full-time at Bell & Howell. At 23, he was elected to the board of directors. At age 29, he was named Bell & Howell president and chief executive officer, the youngest person to head a major American corporation up to that time. In 14 years under Chuck Percy's leadership, Bell & Howell extended its reach in the consumer electronics market. Its number of employees increased 12-fold, and its annual sales climbed from $13 million to $160 million. In 1964, Chuck Percy was a delegate to the Republican National Convention. It was the same year that he ran unsuccessfully for governor of Illinois against Otto Kerner. 2 years later, Chuck Percy challenged that former University of Chicago professor, Paul Douglas, for his seat in the United States Senate. I knew all about that campaign. It was my first. I was a college student and an intern to Senator Douglas and went back to work on his campaign in Illinois when Chuck Percy challenged him. In the final weeks of that campaign, I was with Senator Douglas in my hometown of East St. Louis, Illinois. He was staying at the Holiday Inn, and he received word early in the morning that Chuck Percy's daughter, Valerie, had been murdered in their home. Senator Douglas, I remember this to this day, saw a church across the street from that Holiday Inn. It was St. Henry's Catholic Church. And though Douglas was a Quaker and later Unitarian, he said, I'm going to that church to pray. He went in and he prayed for the Percy family. He walked out the door and he said in quiet tones to his staff, this campaign is over until Chuck Percy announces it will resume. And we will say nothing about this tragedy other than to express our sympathy to his family. What a different day in American politics. Both candidates declared a halt to the campaign. It lasted nearly 1 month. It was the month of September. That decision showed a humanity and a respect which is missing too many occasions from today's politics. Chuck Percy went on to win that campaign. In the Senate, he backed consumer protection and environmental efforts and supported international nuclear nonproliferation. When you listen to his agenda of priorities, you find it hard to place it in today's very conservative Republican agenda. A Navy veteran, he was an outspoken opponent of the war in Vietnam. It's an act of political courage that earned him a place on Richard Nixon's infamous enemies list. He was the first senator to call for an independent prosecutor to investigate Watergate. In 1970, he joined the Foreign Relations Committee. A decade later, when he rose to chair that committee, he explained his views on foreign policy this way, and I quote, I don't want foreign policy developed just by one party and ride roughshod over the other party. I'd much more value a bill that has bipartisan support, That's what this committee achieved in World War II, achieved in the Marshall Plan. Chuck Percy was reelected to the Senate in 1972 by more than 1 million votes, the largest plurality of any Senate candidate in the nation that year. He won a third term in 1978. Running for a fourth term in 1984, he was challenged in a bitter primary by an arch-conservative, a man whose money came from out of state and was never really traced. Although he won that primary, he would go on to lose the general election to my friend Senator Paul Simon, who won with 50.1% of the vote. That same year, Senator Percy's son-in-law, our colleague Senator Jay Rockefeller, was elected to the Senate from West Virginia. After leaving the Senate, Senator Percy said his proudest accomplishment in office had been pushing for more opportunity for women in the federal government. His lasting legacy goes way beyond that. In 1970, it was Senator Chuck Percy who persuaded Richard Nixon to nominate one of Senator Percy's former classmates for a spot on the Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit. 5 years later, that former University of Chicago classmate, John Paul Stevens, was elevated to the U.S. Supreme Court, where he served with distinction until his retirement last year. I can recall when Senator Percy was in office, I had backed his opponent, Senator Douglas, whom he defeated in 1966, and I contacted his office. I was a student at Georgetown Law School. We had a group of Democrats, and I thought, well, I'll just take a flyer here. Let me just call his office and see if he'll meet with us. Of course, he said yes. And the next thing you know, 10 Georgetown University Law Center young Democrats were sitting in Chuck Percy's office. He knew it, and we had a good time, a good exchange. That's the kind of person he was. That's the kind of politics he practiced. That's a reminder of what life was like not that long ago. After leaving office, Senator Percy became an international relations and trade consultant, board chairman of an organization that administers education and cultural exchange programs. 2 years ago, his daughter Sharon Percy Rockefeller announced that her father had Alzheimer's. Senator Percy had been struggling with the disease for more than a decade. Even out of office, he would call me from time to time, usually with a request about Washington, D.C. Illinois was his love, and Chicago area always his hometown. But he had a passion and love for Washington, too, and he worked hard to make this a better city. I want to offer my deepest condolences to Senator Percy's wife of more than 60 years, Lorraine, to Sharon and Jay Rockefeller, and all the Percy children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. I feel honored to have been schooled in politics in Illinois during this era, to have known such extraordinary men when I was just a youngster, a college student starting out. Knowing all of them and watching them in public service gave me an impression and an ideal of what this job should be all about. When I heard of Senator Percy's death, I know that his family had anticipated it, but it brought back many memories of the fine contribution he made to Illinois and to the nation. We're lucky to have men like him, successful in so many ways, devoting a major part of their lives to public service. We're also fortunate that they did it with such a feeling of responsibility, not only to their state and nation, but also to be public servants in the best sense of the word, working with everyone to try to find solutions to problems. It's a lesson we need to relearn today.